Story 1. The Christmas Tape. It was a crisp, chilly Saturday morning when I stumbled upon the find at a local estate sale. Nestled among stacks of old children's books and faded photographs was a plain, unmarked VHS tape. Unlike the other items that told clear stories of their past, this tape promised only mystery with its lack of labeling. I've always been drawn to such enigmas, believing every discarded relic has a story to tell, and this one felt particularly compelling. Back home, with the winter wind howling outside my windows, I set up my dusty VCR. The machine clicked and groaned as it accepted the tape, a relic itself, barely used in the age of digital media. The screen flickered to life, showing a grainy image of a cozy living room decorated for Christmas. A tree adorned with lights and ornaments stood proudly in the corner, surrounded by piles of wrapped gifts. It looked like a scene from a holiday card, until I noticed the family. A man and a woman, along with 2 young children, sat rigidly on the couch, their smiles strained, barely masking an underlying layer of fear. It was subtle at first, like a note of discord straining through a serene melody. The camera was shaky, held by hands that were not steady, occasionally glancing down to reveal a glimpse of dark, nondescript clothing, more a shadow than a person. As the tape rolled, the family's discomfort became impossible to ignore. The father, a tall man with graying temples, spoke in a low, trembling voice. "Please, we don't want any trouble. Take whatever you want." His plea was met with silence, the camera continuing its slow, deliberate pan around the room, lingering on personal details, family photos, children's drawings on the fridge, a dog's bowl under the table. The mother tried to shield the children, her arms wrapped protectively around them, whispering into their ears, perhaps telling them that everything was going to be okay, even as her eyes told a different story, darting around the room, filled with tears. The children clung to her, their small bodies tense, eyes wide and unblinking, staring at the camera as it drew near. Suddenly, the camera's angle shifted, as if the person behind it had knelt down to the children's level. A distorted voice, cold and mocking, came through the static-filled audio. "Tell Santa what you want for Christmas," the voice demanded. The children remained silent, frozen by fear, until the father intervened, his voice breaking. "Please don't involve them. Just tell me what you want." For a moment, there was silence. Then the sound of footsteps, heavy and ominous, approached the family. The camera shook slightly, creating a nauseating sense of anticipation. "What I want," the voice finally replied, "cannot be wrapped." The implications of those words hung in the air, thick with menace. The tape grew increasingly disturbing. The intruder directed the father to unwrap the gifts, each reveal a grotesque parody of a festive ritual. With each package, the family's hope seemed to diminish further, replaced by a deepening despair. Their forced participation, a cruel game enjoyed by their tormentor. The ordeal escalated as the intruder instructed the family to sing Christmas carols. Their voices, quivering and off-key, filled the room with a chilling rendition of Silent Night, a stark contrast to the scene unfolding. The camera zoomed in on each of their faces, capturing every emotion, every tear that they struggled to hold back. As the night dragged on, the psychological torture continued, the camera ever present, documenting every moment of their torment. It felt endless, and I found myself gripping the armrest of my sofa, my heart pounding in my chest, a silent observer to this macabre scene. Finally, the video neared its end. The father, broken and exhausted, turned towards the camera, his eyes pleading. "If you're watching this," he whispered, his voice hoarse, "please, remember that we did everything we could." The screen then went abruptly to static, and when the image cleared, the room was empty, devoid of its previous life, leaving behind only the echoes of the family's last Christmas together. Shaken, I ejected the tape, its contents etched into my mind. I knew I had to report it, to bring it to the authorities, though I doubted they could erase the horror of what I had witnessed. The tape was more than just a recording. It was a window into the darkest depths of human cruelty, a chilling reminder of what some were capable of under the guise of a night meant for joy and celebration. Inheriting my grandfather's dusty old belongings never seemed like it would be more than a nostalgic journey. Among the assortment of faded photographs and antique knickknacks, a collection of unmarked VHS tapes caught my attention. Having spent countless weekends watching old films with him, I assumed these tapes were filled with cherished family memories. Perhaps, I thought, they contained footage of my grandparents' anniversaries or my father's childhood Christmases. Setting up the old VCR felt like stepping back in time. The first few tapes played exactly as expected. Birthday parties, picnics by the lake, holidays, all painted a picture of an idyllic past. It was comforting, watching these glimpses of simpler times, until I reached the last tape, a black VHS, heavier and colder than the others. Its label had long faded, with only the ghost of ink left hinting at a date, 1992. The year whispered memories of a darker chapter in Arizona's history, a series of unresolved disappearances that had chilled the state to its core. My grandfather had lived in Arizona then. I shuddered to think of any connection. The weight of foreboding grew as I inserted the tape. The screen flickered to life, not with the warmth of a family gathering, but with the stark, chilling image of a dimly lit basement. A single bulb swung gently from the ceiling, casting unsettling shadows. Tied to a chair in the center of the frame was a woman, her eyes wide with a terror that reached through the screen and gripped my heart. Her mouth was gagged, her body trembling. The setting was stark, devoid of any personal touch. It was a place of purpose and fear. A distorted voice began to speak off camera, clinical and detached. "State your name and why you are here," it commanded. The woman's muffled cries made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. The camera zoomed in on her eyes, capturing every tear, every moment of despair. Her name, when it finally came through choked sobs, was one I recognized from childhood stories of missing women whispered by my parents. The tape was relentless. It cut to another scene, another woman, similarly bound and broken. With each transition, my dread deepened. These were the missing women of Arizona, their fates sealed away on this tape. The voice continued its interrogation, each question a sharp jab into the reality of their doom. "What did you dream of becoming?" it asked one. "Who will miss you when you're gone?" it taunted another. Their responses, when they could muster them, were heartbreakingly innocent. Dreams of teaching, of children, of growing old. Hours slipped by unnoticed as I was transfixed by the horror unfolding. The tape showcased a macabre ritual of despair and demise, each woman forced to confront her fate before the screen would fill with static and switch to the next victim. As the final sequence began, I felt a presence behind me, as though the room had grown colder, the shadows darker. On the screen, the basement door creaked open, and a figure stepped into the dim light. It was my grandfather. His face, once warm and kind in my memories, was now the face of a monster revealed. He approached the camera, his steps heavy with the weight of his sins. "These are the ones who will not be forgotten," he said, his voice eerily calm and devoid of remorse. "They are mine forever, as this secret is now yours." The tape ended abruptly, the screen diving into a deep static as the VCR ejected the cassette automatically, as if rejecting the poison it contained. I was left in the deafening silence of the basement, the ghostly echoes of my grandfather's confession chilling the air. Trembling, I turned off the equipment, each button press a confirmation of the nightmare. The tapes, these harrowing archives of unspeakable terror, were the last pieces of him, and they had rewritten every memory I held dear. When I inherited my grandfather's quaint seaside cottage, I was drawn not just by the charm of its weathered shingles and salty breezes, but by the promise of solitude. He had been an avid scuba diver, exploring the depths of the ocean with a passion that bordered on obsession. Among his possessions, I found a collection of old diving gear and several water-damaged VHS tapes marked Private Dives. Curiosity piqued, I set up an old VCR to see what underwater wonders he had captured. The first few tapes were mesmerizing glimpses into a vibrant underwater world. Schools of colorful fish darted through coral gardens, and sunbeams pierced the blue depths, casting dancing patterns on the sandy floor. It was a tranquil escape until I reached the last tape. Unlike the others, it was encased in a heavy-duty waterproof shell, suggesting it was meant for protection against more than just water. I loaded the tape with a sense of foreboding, the weight of the case still on my mind. The video began as expected, with a view from my grandfather's camera as he descended into deeper, darker waters. But as he reached a part of the ocean that seemed devoid of life, the tranquility was broken by a sudden disturbance in the water. The camera shook violently, as if buffeted by an unseen force. When it steadied, the view was obscured by a cloud of sediment. But as it cleared, I saw what had disturbed the water. Draped over the coral, almost blending in, was what appeared to be clothing. As my grandfather approached, the true horror became apparent. It was not discarded clothing, but the remains of a human body, its flesh pale and bloated from extended submersion. My grandfather's breathing through his regulator became heavier, his movements hesitant as he scanned the area. The camera panned slowly, revealing more bodies in varying stages of decay, each entangled in the coral like grotesque ornaments. Some were tied with ropes that cut deep into the flesh, while others were weighed down with stones. The tape continued, each turn revealing more of this underwater graveyard. The silence of the ocean was oppressive, the only sound the steady, haunting hiss of the breathing apparatus. My grandfather stopped at one particularly disturbing scene, a circle of bodies arranged around a grotesque centerpiece, a decaying figure seated on a makeshift throne, its skeletal hands resting on the skulls of two divers. As he explored this macabre garden, my grandfather's camera captured close-ups of the faces. Some were blindfolded, others stared vacantly into the abyss. The realization hit me with chilling clarity. These were no accidental deaths. This was the work of someone with a dark and twisted vision. Then, the camera captured something even more chilling. A fresh body, its skin not yet marred by the water. It was a woman, her eyes wide open in a silent scream, a diver's knife still clutched in her hand. The tape suddenly cut to a shot of my grandfather, his face visible through his mask, his expression one of horror, and realization. He turned the camera to face himself, his voice muffled, but urgent as he spoke the only words on the tape. "I found them. I didn't know. Please, forgive." The tape cut off abruptly, leaving a static-filled screen that buzzed like the angry ocean currents in my ears. I sat back, stunned and horrified, not only by the discovery but by the implication that my grandfather, the man I had idolized, might have known about this watery grave all along. I never looked at the ocean the same way again. Its depths hid not just wonders, but also unspeakable horrors, secrets swallowed by the sea, never meant to resurface. The cottage, once a place of refuge, now stood as a solemn reminder of the darkness lurking beneath the waves.